Welcome to Broken. It's interesting to know that over 90% of our viewers choose not to subscribe. If this video resonates with you, please consider subscribing and hitting that like button. Our goal is to reach 500 likes on this post. Share your insights in the comments to stay up to date with our latest stories. Okay, let's move on. Have you ever experienced that sensation where someone seemed to see right into your soul, not in a frightening manner, but in a way that rekindled emotions within you? Have you taken notice of me? I truly observed you. None of it was part of my design. It wasn't a sudden awakening that led me to desire what was never meant for me. Yet, life seldom seeks consent. It simply occurs. Gradually, silently. As rain seeps into your garments, you find yourself drenched before you even comprehend the sensation of being wet. A fleeting look was all it took to set everything in motion. Merely a glance. Innocuous, wouldn't you say? Yet that gaze hung in the air just a moment too long. Perhaps the most disheartening aspect? I kept my gaze steady. When one has lingered in the shadows for an eternity, the act of being noticed can feel akin to salvation. It had been weeks since Ethan had laid a finger on me. They never inquired about my well-being, my emotions, or whether I was all right. He would lean down to kiss the Emma and Noah goodnight, then slip into bed, roll over, and drift off to sleep. I would lie there, wide awake, pondering the moment I faded from his existence. In that fleeting instant, when another's gaze acknowledged my presence, I allowed the moment to linger, to fill the air with its quiet significance. I did not cast it aside. Initially, he remained silent. Yet, his silence spoke volumes. He observed the moment I transformed my hair. When I donned an outfit that was out of the ordinary. In a moment of unrestrained mirth, I found myself laughing heartily at a joke that, upon reflection, held little humor. He observed everything. I observed him observing me. It all began then, not with a mere touch. Not through language. Merely in emotion, the gentle, lingering warmth in your heart when you come to understand that someone recognizes the fragments of yourself you believed had long since faded away. I reassured myself that it was insignificant. I found myself quite flattered. I would never overstep any boundaries. Yet, certain boundaries need not be crossed to shatter. Certain lines fade into obscurity, leaving you questioning their existence from the very beginning. He never sought permission to make contact. He merely requested to observe. What shattered me was the moment of realization. I desired that as well. It is often said that the most perilous yearnings are those left unvoiced. It all started in silence. And his? He arrived bearing a gaze. A glance I feigned ignorance to. For a fragment of my being yearned for the very same desire. What started as a mere spark of curiosity evolved into a gradual, relentless unraveling. One I believed I could master. Until the moment I found myself unable to do so. And now, I find myself here, sharing this with you. To remain silent. There is no need for elaboration. Yet, tales such as this? They dwell in the shadows. Within chambers steeped in stillness. In unions that appear flawless on the surface yet are yearning for sustenance within. Thus, if this already resonates on a personal level. If a quiet voice within you is calling out, I have experienced that as well. Then remain by my side. This transcends mere storytelling. It's a recollection I never imagined I would voice. Join heartfelt tales unfold, where the unspoken transforms into narratives too burdensome to bear in solitude. Perhaps, just perhaps, this might resonate with something you've never had the courage to voice. I found myself not in pursuit of anything. Yet, I observed, when someone finally gazed at me as if I still existed. Not a mother. Not a spouse, not merely a shadow. Only I. I find myself in the midst of my 30s, to Emma and Noah. A home perpetually caught in a state of partial cleanliness, much like a heart that has lingered in a state of half-hearted fulfillment for years. My Ethan once cradled me as if I were something delicate. He once referred to me as his serenity amidst the storm. Now, he hardly utters a word unless there is a necessity. A phone cradled in one hand, quietude in the other. We inhabit the same realm. We keep the rest to ourselves. We share the same bed, yet it feels as if we are two distant islands, separated by an unbridgeable expanse. I inquire about the events of his day. He offers a nonchalant shrug. He inquires whether we possess any additional toothpaste. The depth has reached that level now. I reassure myself that it's just part of the ordinary flow of life. Marriage transforms. The cacophony of life surrounds us. Children seize control. Yet, beneath the surface, I found myself yearning for an elusive something that remained nameless. And then there is him. My Ethan's friend has been a constant presence for many years, in a technical sense. Yet, as time passed, he came to belong to me as well. In subtle manners, he possesses an uncanny ability to observe details that escape the attention of others. It was reminiscent of the moment I decided to cut my hair. Or when my gaze appears weary, he poses inquiries that others overlook. He listens as if it truly matters. He does not engage in flirtation, always maintains boundaries. Yet, there's an undeniable quality in the way he gazes at me. It's as if he perceives every secret I attempt to conceal. The atmosphere in our home is serene, excessively tranquil. The silence envelopes, yet it lacks the tranquility one might hope for. It seems akin to anticipation. Anticipating the moment when everything changes. Anticipating the moment when someone will perceive the encroaching walls. The evening meal unfolds in silence. The Emma and Noah burst into laughter. He glides his finger across the screen. I remove the plates. At times, I find myself gazing at that friend seated opposite me, lost in contemplation. Should he also perceive the stillness? In this household, discussions of emotions are simply off the table. We refrain from engaging in disputes. We merely inhabit this space. Yet, in his presence, I recall the sensations I once experienced. On a particular evening, I noticed him gazing at me as I chuckled at something Emma had remarked. It was not a look imbued with flirtation. It lacked any semblance of boldness. It possessed a gentle quality. Inquisitive, as if he were committing to memory a version of me that had faded from everyone else's view. And I found myself drawn toward that warmth. Without so much as a shift, I reassured myself that it was merely innocent. That it was merely a bond of friendship. Yet, as the words left my lips, a flicker of something deep within me awakened, a sensation I had not experienced in many years. Listen closely. A deep yearning, acknowledgement. Not of the person I have become. Yet, of the person I once was. And perhaps, the person I still aspired to become. Indeed, that is the reality. It all started there, not with a kiss. Not with a mere touch. Yet, two individuals pondered in silence, what it might be like to be desired. Once more, it was merely a weekend assembly. Nothing particularly unusual. A pair of companions, a few neighbors. The Emma and Noah frolicking exuberantly in the backyard. Adhesive digits, the sound of laughter floated in through the open windows. I donned a flowing dress. Something straightforward, hair elegantly gathered. Without any makeup. Yet he regarded me as if I still held some significance, embraced the chaos. The clamor. The marks on my shirt did not define me. He assisted with the grilling process. Caused the Emma and Noah to burst into laughter. Narrated tales that brought a smile to Ethan's face. For a time, I managed to persuade myself that it was all a figment of my imagination. His gaze lingered on me, a heartbeat longer than necessary. There was a gentle warmth in his voice as he uttered my name. He observed details that Ethan had long since overlooked. As I rubbed the back of my neck, a familiar weariness washed over me. Or how I adjusted my stance when I sensed my presence fading away. The evening descended. The sun sank below the horizon. One by one, people began to drift away. The Emma and Noah are feeling drowsy. Stacks of plates. Food remnants securely packaged. My Ethan slipped away into the den. Consistent as ever. He returned to his screen, returning to his realm. And then it was only him and me. He extended his hand to assist with the cleanup, stated it nonchalantly, "I'll remain here. Your appearance suggests that today has been quite taxing for you." I ought to have declined. One ought to have offered a courteous smile and allowed him to continue on his journey. Yet, I simply nodded. Silence enveloped us as we tidied the table, words unspoken between us, only the sound of dishes clattering. The soft hum of the dishwasher fills the air. The burden of all that remains unsaid between us. He was near enough for me to sense the warmth radiating from him. Untouched. Merely nearby, excessively close. A spoon slipped from my grasp and fell to the floor. As our hands reached for it simultaneously, he bent down to retrieve it. As we both stood upright, our gazes intertwined. He remained silent, yet he was not obliged to. His gaze inquired the very question my heart had been softly murmuring for weeks. "Do you sense it as well?" I averted my gaze. I feigned ignorance. Yet, my hands trembled as I twisted the faucet open. Yet, he remained, caught in the moment, cleared the surface of the counter. Inquired about Emma's educational institution. The food received high praise, subtle nuances, yet his tone seemed to be probing for something hidden beneath the surface. He rested against the counter, observing as I polished off the final plate. And there existed a profound stillness, unfazed. Quiet. Simply, electrified. My heart raced with intensity. A constriction gripped my throat, not out of fear. Emerging from consciousness. I reassured myself that it was insignificant, a simple act of kindness from a friend. A weary mother, lost in the depths of a shared silence, pondering its unspoken meanings. Yet, beneath the surface, I was aware of the truth. A change had occurred. It was a truth we found difficult to acknowledge. And yet, in some inexplicable way, we had already done so. He bid her good night. Did not lay a finger on me. Failed to engage, simply gazed. Once more, just once, and departed. With a gentle push, I shut the door after him. Paused for a brief moment, fingers poised on the handle. Breathing heavily, despite having remained still. That evening, I nestled into bed next to Ethan. Not a single word escaped his lips. Wasn't aware of the silence radiating from me as if it were a cry. I gazed at the ceiling, reliving each moment in my mind. In that moment, clarity washed over me. A change occurred. We both sensed it. Even in silence, our connection spoke volumes. Sleep eluded me that night. Not quite. My body lay motionless. Yet my thoughts continued to revolve around it. To that gaze, the stillness that envelopes the air. The electricity I endeavored to overlook. The following morning, I awoke to a peculiar ache nestled in my chest. No guilt. Not exactly. Only bewilderment. An unnamed sensation lingered within me. I rose before the rest of the world stirred awake. I indulged in a longer shower than I typically do. I gazed at my reflection in the mirror for a considerable time. For the first time in months, I felt a desire to present myself beautifully. I slipped into a dress that had remained untouched since the days before the Emma and Noah arrived. Unassuming simplicity. It was simply something that restored my sense of self. Applied a touch of lip color. I styled my hair. Not overly abundant. Simply, That is sufficient. He remained oblivious. My spouse, I mean. He lingered at the table, his fingers gliding over the screen of his phone, a warm cup of coffee cradled in his hand as it always was. The morning was mumbled. Not a glance was spared. I remained in that spot, anticipating. For a purpose, a kind word of praise. A fleeting look. Everything, yet nothing arrived. And then it came into view. The very same companion. He had dispatched a straightforward note. Yesterday, you radiated beauty. I trust that you are aware of that. My heart leapt. Not due to the language. Yet, it was due to the fact that someone laid eyes on me, and that moment marked the inception of the tempest. I began to invest my energy into pursuits once more. Apparel, tresses, even fragrance. Yet, not for the man I chose to wed. I reassured myself that it posed no danger. That attention is not a transgression. I was worthy of being acknowledged. Yet, there are days. There are days when I find myself wishing for Ethan to take notice. Merely to provide myself with a reason to cease, to regain my footing. Do you see? I was merely attempting to capture your attention. Yet he did not. He observed the vacant peanut butter jar. The escalating expenses. The remote, lost in the abyss of cushions, yet, not for me. As I sank deeper into the shadows of my own home, a vibrant spark ignited within me each time that friend entered the room. It was not a matter of the physical realm, not at this moment. Yet, I found myself anticipating moments that were perhaps best left unimagined. It was a pleasure to hear his voice at the door. It was akin to capturing his gaze from the other side of the lawn. It was a fleeting moment, a brief connection, as that subtle smile graced your lips when our eyes met for just a heartbeat longer than necessary. His presence brought out a newfound joy in me, and I found myself laughing more often, correcting my posture. As I spoke, my fingers grazed my neck. Little details, moments that filled me with a sense of belonging. Even if only within the confines of my own mind. And each time he gazed at me, it felt as though I truly mattered. I felt a twinge of self-loathing. I was fully aware of my actions. Even if I continued to feign ignorance, within the depths of my heart, I was crafting a hidden realm. Stone by stone. And he found himself within it. Yet Ethan was not. Yet, there remains a lingering thought. I reassured myself that everything was all right. It was not an affair. It was merely a matter of attention. Merely a gentle warmth enveloping a chilly, well-known home. Yet, that's the deception we embrace, isn't it? That which holds significance is only so when it exists in the tangible realm. We remain secure as long as we refrain from crossing the boundary. Yet, the reality? I had already traversed it, within the confines of my thoughts. In my yearning. As I lingered in anticipation, hoping for another's gaze to meet mine, rather than seeking the moment when Ethan would truly notice me once more, the concept originated from me. An evening dedicated to cinematic delights. Simply a laid-back affair, a little something for the Emma and Noah. I reached out to a handful of individuals. He was the sole respondent. I reassured myself that it was nothing to worry about. Merely a companion. Merely a film. We would gather in unison, sharing popcorn, exchanging laughter, and then drift off to sleep as if the world outside held no weight. Yet, the moment he arrived and I swung that door open, the atmosphere shifted. He arrived with an assortment of snacks, wore a smile as always. Yet, the manner in which his gaze intertwined with mine was anything but ordinary. The Emma and Noah selected a film, something whimsical. The lights were dimmed. All settled in with ease. My Ethan lounged in the armchair, his fingers gliding over the screen of his phone. His gaze scarcely grazed the screen. The three of us in the room went largely unnoticed. I found myself perched at one end of the couch. He occupied the opposite seat. The Emma and Noah nestled between us, their laughter ringing out as they tossed popcorn playfully, oblivious to the silent and perilous events that were quietly taking shape in their midst. The film failed to capture my attention. I sensed his presence, not the way he touched me. Not his breath. Merely, his very essence. A magnetic pull I neither desired nor could escape. In a fleeting moment, our gazes locked from opposite ends of the room, only for a moment. Yet, it seemed as though time itself had come to a standstill. My heart pounded with urgency, my throat constricted. I averted my gaze first, for if I hadn't, I might have been unable to look away at all. The film reached its conclusion. The Emma and Noah were drowsy, nestled together like tender echoes of the existence I had created. A life I cherished. A life I was deceiving, in hushed stillness. Silence enveloped the scene, and not a soul stirred. Not immediately. The credits began to roll. My Ethan stirred from sleep, his words a soft murmur about needing to check an email. Exited the room. I failed to bid goodnight. It was merely the two of us. Within the shadowy confines of the room, amidst that unyielding hush, silence enveloped us. Our faces remained devoid of smiles, we simply remained in our seats. My hand glided over the throw blanket. I grasped it as if it were my only salvation, for within me, a cacophony of cries echoed relentlessly. Desiring. Fearful. Then, he murmured, his voice barely rising above a whisper, I wasn't watching the movie. I chose not to respond. I was not obliged to, for my silence resonated more profoundly than any response could. I rose to my feet. Commenced the collection of the popcorn bowls. He trailed behind me into the kitchen, as he always did. Yet, nothing seemed to embody the essence of always any longer. He refrained from making contact with me, did not lean in. No confessions were made. Yet, the moment I turned to face him, his gaze spoke volumes, all the words I dreaded to hear. And even more dire. All that I yearned to embrace. I ought to have urged him to cease. I ought to have set a boundary. However, I did not. In that fleeting instant, an unvoiced connection lingered in the air. In the space that exists solely for us. Do not touch, not a mere kiss. However, consensus. We both recognized the connection we shared, that we were both anticipating the same outcome. We found ourselves perilously near to a point of no return. He departed following that moment, silently. With utmost respect. Yet, the gravity of that moment lingered on. With a decisive click, I secured the door after him. Not that I wished to exclude him. Yet, I was aware that the next occasion might not afford me the same certainty, and somewhere deep within, beneath the weight of guilt and the shadow of fear, lay a small, quivering fragment of my being, yearning for the possibility of a next time. The hour was late. The house lay in silence, heavy and oppressive, as it often does in the stillness that follows midnight, when the very walls seem to be eavesdropping. Rest eluded me. I wandered through the kitchen, my bare feet whispering against the cool floor, cradling a mug of tea that I had no desire to sip. Suddenly, a knock echoed through the silence. Gentle. 3 gentle taps, as if uncertainty lingered in his mind, yet he chose to step into the moment regardless. The door creaked open beneath my touch. Silence speaks volumes. Merely. Gaze. Weary, compassionate. Uncertain. I moved to the side. He entered the room. We made no pretense that this was anything but serious. Our conversation did not touch upon the weather, or the film from earlier, or the Emma and Noah. He lingered at the table. I rested my weight against the counter. The stillness that enveloped us held no discomfort. It was brimming, overwhelmed. At last, he found his voice. Silently, averting their gaze from me. Your happiness has been elusive. Only that. No question mark. A truth fell into the center of the room, as if it had been poised for years, finally ready to make its presence known. I did not refute it. I was unable to. My gaze fell upon the floor. Upon my chipped nail polish, at the rip in the hem of my pajama pants. I expressed my weariness. He inclined his head in acknowledgement, and then, softer than before, as if he feared the sound of his own voice, he said, I don't want to do anything. I simply wish to behold it. I raised my gaze, gradually. What is there to see? I murmured. He remained unyielding. There was no smile. No explanation was provided. You, just as you are. Devoid of the armor. And I shattered. For years, no one had uttered anything quite like that to me. Far from it. No, you are truly beautiful. No, you are alluring. I desire you. I simply wish to see you. He uttered it as if invoking a sacred blessing. Not a request. This is not a figment of imagination, not desire. What truly broke me was the realization that a part of me desired it as well. For years, I had felt as though I were invisible, merely a specter passing through the lives of others. Not at all. Not interested. And in that moment, there stood a figure, seeking nothing at all, yet extending the invitation to bear witness to my journey. I sensed a vulnerability within me. As if my skin had been stripped away, as if he could perceive every fissure. Each pang. Each silent cry I had concealed under the guise of my duties as a wife, matriarch. Spirit. I took my seat opposite him, my hands quivered with an unsteady pulse. You really shouldn't say things like that, I whispered. I understand, he remarked. However, it has already been articulated. We remained still. We remained untouched. We scarcely dared to breathe. The atmosphere in the room was heavy with unease. Yet not the type that culminates in flesh meeting flesh. It was the sort that cleaves something wide within you. That night, betrayal took on a different form, one that was not rooted in the physical realm. There was no kiss taken in secrecy, no hands extended over the table. Yet what transpired was something profoundly more significant. Granting oneself the freedom to feel, we granted one another the freedom to embrace our emotions. To cease the charade of ignoring our emotions. And that was the ultimate act of treachery, for once you have been noticed, returning to the shadows is no longer an option. Not without shedding blood. The following morning, I found it impossible to meet his gaze. He is not Ethan. Not someone I consider a friend. Not even I. I navigated the house as if I were intent on leaving no evidence of my presence. I prepared breakfast. Lunches prepared with care, neatly folded laundry that I had no recollection of washing. After that night, our words fell silent. No word at all. Not a single look exchanged as we crossed paths at the school drop-off or in the grocery store parking lot. He failed to make an appearance. He no longer extends a hand with the garden as he once did. I refrained from lingering near the front porch in Ethan's absence. And what about me? I steered clear of reflections. Not due to an inability to confront my actions, yet, I found myself unable to confront the desires that lay within me. My Ethan stayed unchanged. Disengaged. Unsurprising. He continues to scroll through his phone each night. I find myself still uncertain whether I shared something with him that morning or if it slipped my mind entirely. Yet, a transformation stirred within him. Only a small amount. He began to observe me from the periphery of his gaze, becoming aware of my silence. Inquiring just a single time about my well-being. Only a single time, and I replied in the affirmative. Without a doubt, I agreed. What more is there to express? In truth, I find myself gradually unraveling beneath the burden of a dialogue that lacked physical contact, yet somehow manages to feel as though it has ripped something deep within me wide open. Negative. I was unable to express that. The stillness that lingered between us grew more oppressive, not the typical variety. This was not a mere absence. It was an undeniable presence, controlled. It was not guilt that silenced my voice. It was dread, a lingering apprehension that he could pose the question. That he could gaze into my eyes, truly see me, and inquire, "What's happening?" I found myself at a loss for words, uncertain of how to respond. Fear gripped me, for I sensed that once I began to speak, there would be no end to my words. I would speak the truth. I would reveal it all to him. It encompasses not only the night itself but also the years that preceded it, the solitude, the throbbing pain, the gradual wearing away of our connection. Yet, he never inquired. I never extended the offer. "Is it Liam?" He vanished without a sound. No extensive dialogue. There is no farewell. He merely ceased to visit, yet, he departed with a remnant lingering in the air. A silhouette. Within the corridor, beside the basin. In the recesses of my thoughts, each time I extended my hand toward the light switch in the darkness of night. He had vanished, yet, his presence lingered in the quietude. In the moments where we nearly stepped over a boundary. In the breath we stifled, within the phrases we consumed. My marriage remained intact. Not at first glance. The dinner remained prepared. The bills continued to be settled. The laughter of Emma and Noah echoed through the air. Yet, a fracture had formed deep within me. Yet, it appeared that no one took notice. Perhaps that was the deepest wound of all, not the treachery. Not the yearning. Yet, here I was, sinking beneath the surface, while those around me remained oblivious to the weariness hidden behind my seemingly cheerful facade. I pressed forward. As women often do. As mothers often do. As wives often do. Yet, a profound shift resonated within me now. For once a person truly perceives your essence, returning to the shadows of invisibility becomes an impossibility. One may choose to feign. Yet a fragment of your being forever holds onto the memory. I often ponder whether betrayal requires a physical form, or perhaps a single thought suffices. A gaze that holds on just a moment too long. A silence brimming with desire. If a heartbeat falters in the presence of another, does it then become a transgression? For I have never laid a hand upon him. Never. It was not his hand. Not that visage. Yet, I caught a glimpse of my own reflection in his gaze. I longed to remain in that place. More time than I ought to have taken. In his gaze, I appeared unwearied. I was anything but ordinary. I was not overlooked. I was observed. I felt. For a woman who had lingered in the shadows for an eternity, it was akin to a rebirth. But what does that render me? I revisit that night repeatedly, each time unraveling its layers anew. The phrases. The moment of stillness. The chasm that lies between his desire and my quietude. I reassure myself that I have not overstepped any boundaries. Yet perhaps the reality is. I marked the boundary at the point of greatest security. In that place, I could maintain the illusion that I had not wronged a soul. Yet, I possess a deeper understanding. I am aware of the emotions that stirred within me. At times, the burden of unfulfilled possibilities weighs more than the reality of what could have been. Each morning, Ethan gently kisses my forehead before he heads off to work. Continues to inquire about our needs from the store. It continues to serve as a reminder for me to settle the electric bill. Yet, he never inquires about my well-being. He remains oblivious to the silent tears I shed in the solitude of the bathroom. He remains oblivious to the way I flinch when he strolls by, as though I am preparing for a question that never materializes. Perhaps that is the true act of treachery. I crafted a life in which I could vanish unnoticed amidst the ordinary. Could it have been a sign of fragility? Shall I allow my heart to roam freely? Or could it be something more profound? Perhaps something more gentle? Is there something more sorrowful? Could it have been solitude? Veiled in the guise of bravery? To be desired, genuinely desired, can feel like the very breath of life when you've been struggling for it. I never sought to be discovered. Yet, once I experienced it, the sensation lingered in my memory, impossible to erase. Now I find myself suspended between two realities, the life I have embraced and the one I envisioned, if only for a fleeting instant, reflected in another's eyes. Such a sorrow is one for which no one is truly ready. Have you ever yearned for something with such intensity, fully aware that it might lead to your undoing? Not due to any carelessness on your part, not due to any selfishness on your part. Is it that you've grown weary of fading into the background? Weary from the constant effort of giving, of being present, and of maintaining composure, only to sense that your presence goes unnoticed? My intention was never to cause pain to anyone. I did not rise with a hunger for chaos, yet, amidst the quietude of my marriage, I began to diminish. And then, a pair of eyes fell upon me. This is precisely what it was, not desire. Do not flee. Only acknowledgement, and I ponder, does that render me unfaithful? Or merely human? Perhaps you have experienced that as well. In the stillness of a kitchen, under the cloak of night, your heart races, stirred by emotions that elude expression. Lingering smiles exchanged with someone who isn't quite right, anticipating a question you quietly wish they would avoid, as uncertainty clouds your response. Allow me to pose a question to you at this moment. Could it be considered a betrayal? Or merely a longing concealed within quietude? Was it a mistake, or merely the truth? Share your thoughts in the comments below. No judgment will be passed here. Only the truth. Perhaps your narrative resonates with mine in some way. Perhaps my story resonates with another's hidden truth. If this narrative resonated with you, if it stirred thoughts of the part of yourself you seldom acknowledge, then I urge you, do not merely scroll by.